It's not easy being green.
Welcome to GreenTV. I'm your host, David Kaiser, and want to thank you for tuning in to GreenTV. Please note that our new airtime is Thursday afternoons at 5:30. Our show today centers around labor and workers' rights in St. Joseph County. Now, NAFTA, deregulation, living wages, corporate outsourcing, tax issues, and the movement of manufacturing jobs are all issues that we hear about every day in St. Joe County. Helping us focus today on these issues is our guest, Joe Carbone. Now, Joe is the Vice President of the St. Joe Valley Project, chairs the local Jobs with Justice chapter, is a delegate to the AFL-CIO's Labor Council, and is a labor rep for the St. Joseph County United Way. We'd like to welcome Joe. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Dave.
Joe, now tell us a little bit, before we get into the issues we wanted to talk about, tell us a little bit how you personally got involved in labor and activism.
I've been working with the phone company for the last 30 years now, and in that time, about 28 years of that, I've either served as a steward, chief steward, or highest title was an area rep for the building out on Cleveland Road there.
Okay.
So that's how I got involved with the movement. One of the things that really got me involved with the St. Joe Valley Project and the National Interfaith on Worker Justice was the DCERT certification that was tried out at Zyker, where the corporate company got the immigrants to sign decertification on the false information that it was a signature for health insurance. So we were able to defeat that, and Father Pat Sullivan, who I guess you would call my mentor, was the one who got me involved with local issues that revolve around worker rights stuff. So that's how I basically got involved with locally with the St. Joe Valley Project.
Okay, so you got your start as a union steward in a union shop, and that just sort of piqued your interest, and then an issue came along that you attached, and 28 years later, you're still doing it.
Yeah, partially I have grown up in the Catholic religion, and part of our faith is that we go out and help our community to make sure that we leave it a better place than what we started with. So.
Wow, that's admirable. Well, you mentioned the St. Joe Valley Project.
Yes.
Now, I may know about it, but I want you to tell our viewers a little bit about what the St. Joe Valley Project is. What is it?
Yeah, we're a collection of local-based organizations and individuals who sign and give us some member dues to help with worker rights issues and social justice issues. A couple of organizations like the Progressive Student Alliance at Notre Dame, the Central Labor Council, the AFL-CIO's Central Labor Council, and some unions have stepped up to support us in the effort to help workers.
Okay, great. Now, you say it's funded by donations and contributions. Are there any other entities, any corporations that help fund this, or is it all pretty much private?
Presently, it's all volunteer and member dues that pay for the phone lines and the. We just put together a workers' rights call center with a toll-free line, so we're hoping we don't bust the bank with that.
Sure,
but our member dues have been able to support us, and hopefully with our co-partnership with the Indiana Department of Labor, we might be able to get some grant funding in order to expand our efforts.
Okay, so the Indiana Department of Labor is involved in this as well. Do they play any role in the day-to-day operation or in the issues that the local branch focuses on, or is this just an affiliation as a funding source and a way to maybe draw on their resources or their knowledge?
Actually, we're a full partner with the Indiana Department of Labor,
Okay.
and they only have an office in Indianapolis. So what Nancy Guyot, who's the commissioner, and I worked, and I've been working with the Department of Labor with Bob Buckley a little bit for the last 2 years to try to get something off the ground. But Nancy was able, as commissioner, to move us a lot quicker with the relationship with the state If the person actually signs our form, that becomes the form has been accepted by the state as an input form for if a person wants to file with the Department of Labor. They handle the wage and hour, and also IOSHA, which is the occupational end of it. So we can help people get information from the state, and if they need be, we can actually act as a person to file, to have them fill the form out, and we submit that down to the state.
Okay, so it's almost like a branch office then for the Department of Labor.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. Now, what are some of the issues that you're currently focusing on here in St. Joe County?
Well, there are frequently asked questions. So we did have a little training session, and one of the first things that was asked was around the question was people working in locations that don't get breaks and lunches. And people say, well, there's federal laws covering that. Well, the actual law is that unless you're 18 in the state of Indiana, under 18 in the state of Indiana, you're not entitled to breaks and lunches. So,
really?
Yeah, a person called in with the question that, well, someone read that Walmart doesn't give, breaks, and
Right.
isn't that against the federal Standard Labor Act?
Sure.
Well, the gentleman had worked union all his life and just couldn't fathom that people don't get breaks and lunches.
Yeah.
The law is the law, and that's why it's important that we get involved with
Sure.
making sure that the 40-hour work week stays a 40-hour work week, and not allow the government just to change them like they just did to prevent people from getting overtime.
Wow, that's remarkable. I would have always assumed that those lunch breaks and those breaks are federal law. I would never have thought that those weren't actually on the books. So the project is an advocacy organization as well. It sounds like you're a conduit to the Department of Labor, but it sounds like an issue like that is one that you actually can be an advocate for the people who feel like they're not being treated fairly.
Right.
So you can be their voice in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Wow. So now, what other issues are you focusing on locally besides the ability to be a conduit or to be an advocate for somebody who's having a problem? Are there any long-range projects that the St. Joe Valley project is focusing on?
Well, a few years ago, you probably heard of the Living Wage campaign.
Right.
We'd like to say that was the start of it, because people, it's gotten the conversation going, and it is still alive. I think that in the living wage, we need to refocus what it was all about.
Okay.
Opponents of the living wage changed it to a minimum wage for everybody in the county. That was never the intent of the living wage.
Right.
It was based around that if a corporation comes here and we give them tax dollars, that we as citizens should expect that corporation to pay a living wage.
Right.
Not the minimum wage, which doesn't even make poverty levels. And that's, the living wage needs to be discussed, but generally it's what it takes for a family of four to be above poverty.
Okay.
And I think it ranges in around $10 an hour, but I wouldn't be quoted on that.
Right. Right.
But the state has statistics on what those numbers really are.
Okay, so let me work through a scenario here then. Company X wants a tax break from the county or from the city to put a plant out at Bendix, let's say, or out
Right.
west of town. The St. Joe Valley project tries to be in the beginning stages, a voice in the beginning stages, so that there is a negotiated agreement before they're granted the tax break, so that when they come to town, they know what they have to pay? Or is it a scenario where they get these tax breaks, they come to town, and you're kind of chasing the issue, trying to get them to agree with you? How does that all, you see what I'm saying? I wonder
Yeah.
how that works.
We would love to be at the table.
Right.
And
Okay.
making sure that economic development includes the best parts for everybody in the community.
Right.
And not just, the landowner trying to get rid of something, or, and part of what I've read in the Tribune about why our taxes were raised is because the tax abatements that we've given, I think they said almost 30% of the land has tax abated. So in order for us to get someone to clean our streets
Right.
or to have police protection, the citizens have to pick up where corporations used to foot the bill. So, yeah, we need corporations to come here, but we need them as good corporate citizens
Sure.
who add value. I mean, my company came here about 17 years ago, SBC out there. We were in Meritech at the time.
Right.
But when they opened that facility, we're still out there, and we've actually grown from the number of people. Now, an AccuRide got the abatements,
Big dinosaur, yeah.
and basically just as soon as they were able to fulfill their legal requirement,
Right.
took their abatement to Mexico. So that's where we feel that, it's important to bring business in. But like the mayor of Goshen said, I don't need to bring in $5 an hour jobs, because by the time I include infrastructure, I'm losing money in my city.
Right.
So economic development is important, but development that increases the community standards are what we strive for.
So you're looking for companies that are willing to partner with the local population, not just come in and take what they can get so they can make a cheaper widget while they're here, but you're looking for companies that have a social conscience and that actually want to work with the local residents. That's a very nice ideal.
Right.
Tell me how hard it is to get on the front end of those issues. Tell me how hard it is to get at the table versus knocking on the doors after they're already here and they're open for business.
Right. Like I said, the Workers' Rights Center took us over 2 years to actually talking with folks and getting support for it. And it's the same thing with these issues on living wage and getting to the table with the folks. Unless we show that we have some kind of power base, and power base is the voters.
Right.
I mean, if the voters support what everybody's doing, then there's no reason for them to change their mode of operation. I think people are trying to understand why their taxes have gone up as high as they did. And that will refocus their ideas of what they want government to provide them.
Okay.
And who should pay for those
Right.
services.
Okay. Tell me how somebody watching us today can get in contact with the St. Joe Valley Project. How does somebody who wants to get involved pick up the phone or get online and do something?
Okay. We do have, our phone lines are open. We would appreciate if you lose our local phone number, which is 574-287-3834. That number will come onto an answering machine, and there are 3 different options there.
Okay.
One that you can just leave a general message dealing with anything you would like, and that'd probably be the place that if you wanted to volunteer, that would be the place to put your name and contact information.
Okay, great.
The other number for people outside of the 574 exchange is
All the time.
yeah, that might be the thing to do that.
Okay.
You've got my contact
Yeah,
information,
I
right?
will contact you in February.
Okay, but if you contact me if you send me an email on like a blurb. European folks who are coming over, we do have someone that can help them with translation. So we're hoping to get the information out to individuals that way.
Okay, wonderful. And you can also see on our screen just previously, we had some of that contact information up there. And you bring up a very interesting point. You have Spanish speaking, you have Polish speaking, and English speaking. The labor force in St. Joseph County is changing. I think
Yes.
the growth of the Hispanic community on our west side, the growth of the Hispanic community in parts of Elkhart County, Goshen, is really forcing everybody to look at how they provide services for the labor groups now, because we do have different language speakers, and I think it's great that you guys provide that. I want to go back a little bit to living wage versus minimum wage.
Okay.
I want to talk about the difference. A minimum wage is $5.15 an hour.
Right.
Living wage is, and this is just to the poverty level, is around $10 an hour. If you got a 2,080 hour a year, which is standard, you're just over 20 grand a year. That's not enough for a family of four.
According to the government, it is. I mean, I find it difficult with what I make at a union facility.
Right.
That people can actually live on what the government says is a livable wage.
Right.
I know the United Way and the state of Indiana has worked out what livable wages are, and they're above what the government has set as a minimum wage.
Yeah.
And actually, the minimum wage, it can be lowered if you're training, so they can lower your wage for 90 days to train you. Or if you're in the service industry, it's $2.15 an hour.
Yeah.
And I hope
tips.
people leave tips, so
They better.
they sure as heck can't live on $2.15 an hour.
No, I always start at 20%. If the service is good, I stay there. We work down from that if we
There you
have to,
go.
but I think 20% is a fair tip. All right, well, thanks. I know that there is a difference, certainly, between minimum and living wage. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about today, I see you have Jobs with Justice
Right.
on your shirt, and we're familiar with Jobs with Justice. In fact, one of our future shows is going to show a film that they had done on the FTAA, the new Free Trade of the Americas Agreement. But I want you to talk a little bit about, here in St. Joe County, Jobs with Justice. First off, who is Jobs with Justice?
Okay. Jobs with Justice is a national organization,
Okay.
but they believe that they have like 41 community-based chapters, which we are been affiliated with. In order to be affiliated with them, we had to get at least 5 community-based organizations and 5 other organizations. It couldn't just be all union, or it can't just be all community-based. It has to be a coalition that works together to address working people's issues. And one of those issues is the right to freely have a voice at work. And having a voice at work brings up the whole community. And that's part of what the national is about. It's to make sure that we all are raised up by the tide rather than being
Buried by
buried by it. Yeah.
Okay.
Good
I
analogy.
understand fully, and I don't swim so good all the time,
No,
so
yes.
I understand. Tell us what Jobs with Justice is focusing on in St. Joe County. Can we relate this national organization to our viewers out there? Can you tell me a little bit about what you're involved in?
A few of the things that they've focused on is there are 4 areas that Jobs with Justice nationally has chosen to focus in on. And hopefully I can remember all 4.
It's okay. That's why we have tape. We can always.
There you go. One of them being the right to organize. Second is health care for all individuals. Third is the immigration that be fair and that we be the country that we started out to be. 90%, I believe, of the people in this country are either direct immigrants or second, third generation immigrants. So
Right.
immigration.
So the people who aren't, we've corralled all them on reservations. So.
Right. So, fair immigration policy is important because it's a way that corporations have used individuals, and I've been in a couple of things at Notre Dame where they're actually slave trading going on in the migrant worker communities. So it still goes on in this country, and it's amazing that things can be that way. So locally, we've pulled it together, and we do 4 actions a year
Okay.
that highlight these issues. The last couple ones we did was the March to Miami,
Right.
which we did on the Notre Dame campus along with the progressive students. And that highlighted the NAFTA and what the Free Trades of America agreement would do to our economy if passed.
Right.
The next one we're planning is on March the 4th, and that's going to be around national health care. So
Okay.
we will provide you with information on what that's all about.
We'd love to, and having come from healthcare myself, I ran some low-income clinics that provided healthcare to migrant workers. So I had an opportunity to go into the camps and visit the growers, and I think healthcare and national healthcare is a huge priority, and we'll probably do a show about it.
So that's good. Maybe we can do it around the same time.
Exactly.
In fact, around March 4th, because that's going to be a national action. So
I think the timing would be wonderful then. Let me talk a little bit about NAFTA and the FTAA, but I think before we get there, I want to back up a little bit and touch on something that you'd mentioned earlier, and that was deregulation. I think that deregulation is something that doesn't necessarily stick in the news. You know, we all have attention spans, or so they think, about this long. And that issue has come up numerous times. And first off, who's pushing for deregulation, and why do you think, when you hear deregulation, why do you think it's an issue? Why do you think it's not something that just comes and goes away? Who's pushing deregulation?
Well, I think you're right about people's attention span, and if they really tied them together, they could understand the who's pushing on it. I believe it's a corporate issue that in order to drive down the price of labor, they've deregulated industries. Few industries that you can think about, and you can tell me if costs have dropped or not. Is the trucking industry. That was a major one, and that has driven down the price of labor, but the firms that were left behind are making more profits on those individuals. Airline industry, they said it was too expensive to fly into South Bend, so we have to have these hubs, and so what if your economy is, you can't fly from here to Indianapolis. Hopefully, I guess there's one that may come back, but we have to subsidize them by $1 million.
That's just outrageous that you can't fly and you can't take a train.
Right.
It's just ridiculous. I'm sorry.
And the one that really has affected me personally is the deregulation of the phone industry.
Okay.
So I can highlight some of the things that happened the very first year. 1984, when they were deregulated, the American economy was selling $900 million a year in excess. We were exporting $900 million in phone equipment. After the first year of NAFTA, we started importing $1 billion of telephone equipment. So we went from a manufacturer to an importer. So that had a direct relationship with, the Western Electrics of the world, which was the AT&T. Deregulation attacked AT&T, which was all union, 90% union at the time. We do not manufacture any phone equipment through Western Electric anymore. They also went to, they say, to make it cheaper for folks, we need competition, so there became MCI became involved. Well, MCI was bought out by WorldCom.
Right.
Well, WorldCom was nothing more than a card shack where they were saying they had lines and they were just releasing our stuff. So deregulation was set up to destroy the cost of labor, to drive down the cost of labor.
Okay.
And our industry, the phone industry, is one of the only industries left that has a high density of union workers, and that's because we've been working with the legislatures locally, and that has not protected our jobs. We made sure that these other corporations are actually doing what they're trying to do.
Wow. So deregulation, and those of us who are a little left of center sort of suspected all along that there's nothing to be good. There's nothing good to come from deregulation if business is supporting it.
Right.
That there has to be a bottom line in a market economy that we live in. There has to be a money motivation for this to happen, and it's not in favor of the worker. The money motivation is in favor of the corporation.
And one quick example on deregulation is electric. You've seen what happened in California, where the company that was closing down their facilities to drive up the price were also rerouting energy out of the state through their Enron was the company. And when the government found out about it, it's because it was a Democratic state and Republican controlled, they did not make the companies rewrite their contracts, which basically is driving California broke.
Wow.
So it is the role of government to regulate corporations that have total control of ours. And we've built the network, and they're just skimming on it and not investing in it. And we need to take control back to the government.
I think if anything can be learned from some of the things you've talked about today is that we can't trust the government or corporations to do what's best for us. We have to take hold of these issues, and we have to make these issues real for the communities that we live in. I want to thank Joe Carbone so much for joining us today on GreenTV. Thanks for tuning in to GreenTV. Please check our website, stjoevalley.greens.org, and tune in Thursdays at 5:30 for GreenTV. And as always, live green, think green, vote green. Thanks to Joe Carbone. I'm David Kaiser. So long.
It's not easy being green, having to spend each day in the color of the leaves, when it could be nicer being red, yellow or gold, or something much more colorful like that, like that. It's not easy being green. It's not easy being green, having to spend each day in the color of the leaves, when it could be nicer being red.
Host David Kaiser, and today we're presenting a film relating to the expansion of NAFTA. The FTAA, or the Free Trade Area of the Americas, is a proposed trade agreement that would extend NAFTA to the entire Western Hemisphere. Produced by the Massachusetts chapter of Jobs with Justice, we are proud to present Danger Ahead, the FTAA is coming your way.
I see it too, what it is sins will do. But the earth is my halo, walking invincible. I see it too, what it is sins will do. But the earth is my halo, walking invincible. And I see it too, what it is sins will do. Entire earth is my halo, walking invincible.
NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, destroyed hundreds of thousands of jobs in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Corporations moved their plants south of the border, where they exploit Mexican workers with lower and lower salaries. A new trade agreement is coming at us. It's called the FTAA, the Free Trade Area of the Americas. It's a super NAFTA, an expanded NAFTA for the whole hemisphere, from the southern tip of South America all the way up to the Arctic Circle, except Cuba. The FTAA would give corporations and investors more power than ever before and would force workers, communities, and countries to compete in a race to the bottom, driving down wages, working conditions, union negotiating power, environmental standards, and even our rights to say how our communities and our countries are run. Our brothers and sisters have tasted the bitter fruit